Happy Wednesday, everyone. How we doing? Today, we're going to talk about everything I saw this week. We'll also look at the pitfalls of retiring with $3 million. What are some things that are going to derail your plan? We'll model those in our planning software on Right Capital, and we'll also do some Q&A if we have time. Hope everyone's having a good week. It's going by so fast. We had Memorial Day on Monday. It was good to have some time with friends, a little extra time at home with family. But I got to say, man, having that extra day at home, no daycare, that kind of throws you off a little bit. So, don't know if anyone else has young kids out there. Trying to work when they're both at home is challenging. Well, talk amongst yourselves while I'm getting my notes pulled up here. All right, there's my notes. We are in business. Okay, I wanted to cover a couple of stories that caught my eye this week, and then we'll get into some of those planning questions and then some Q&A possibly. So, first story I saw this week was about OpenAI and the release of their new device that is slated to be coming out. They released this video of Sam Altman and Johnny Ive, and it looked kind of like a commercial for San Francisco. At least that's what the top comments said, and I agreed with them. It was a cool video, and it got me excited for what this device could be. Johnny Ive is somewhat of a legendary figure within Silicon Valley and the tech scene in general. He is most famous for working hand in hand with Steve Jobs to create some of the most iconic products that we all, like the iPhone, Mac, their Apple products. So as a user of ChatGPT, I'm very excited to see what they come up with. A couple of problems that I can envision happening with this device. Number one is, there has not been an AI device that has really caught on yet. Even on the phone, the biggest, baddest tech company in the world, Apple right now, with Siri, it should be an amazing experience, but it's really falls flat. So with OpenAI going to be able to do something that even Apple can't do right now, we'll have to see. And then two is just the privacy aspect of it. How many people are really going to allow AI to be on them, on and surveilling them 24/7? I think a lot of people are going to have serious concerns with that. You could argue, well, it's kind of doing that already, Zach. Don't be naive, but still, when it's actively listening to you to give suggestions, possibly drive sales, it is entering a whole new realm, in my opinion. So, yeah. So we'll see what it. The other thing too is it doesn't sound like it's going to be a crazy expensive device. Now that could give you a clue as to what the profit center of that is going to be, right? It's going to be your information, but contrasting that with other products that Johnny Ive is most famous for, those products were very highly priced and only available to the higher end consumer, but I think they're going to try and make it more mass market. So I think when it comes out, I'm probably going to get it because, we'll see what it does. I don't want to commit to it. We don't even know what it looks like yet. Some people were speculating that it was the glasses that Johnny was wearing in the video, but then I heard reports that they think it's like a puck, like something that you could wear on your lapel like that, or just set on the table. So we're gonna have to see. But anyway, enough about AI. Another video that I thought was fascinating this week was put out by Rob Berger. Rob has the self-named YouTube channel. He is pretty widely known in the personal finance realm, especially the retirement space. He lives out on the East Coast in the DC metro area, but he got roped into going to one of these free steak dinners for an asset management company, and he just had a horrible time. And he outlined it in a 20-minute video. I watched it, and it flew by. You could tell he was really mad that he had to sit through this thing, and he recounted it point by point, and it was really funny because just being in the wealth management industry, you hear about the guys that do this for marketing, and I mean that's kind of what we're doing here, right? Is having kind of a live format where people can interact and we can talk about what's going on in personal finance and retirement. But these steak dinners are probably closer to the hard selling tactics that people fear they are. So I took some notes on Rob's video, so I thought I'd walk through those now. So, my expectation, what I thought he was going to say was the hard sell, trying to scare attendees under the guise of advice. And he went really in depth. So here's what he said. So these events are dangerous if you are not informed. He actually said the word dangerous if you're not informed. How he ended up at this event in the first place, Rob's a really savvy guy. He was a lawyer for a long time. He's not in the investment industry per se, but he is a commenter on it and he observes it very closely. But originally he got an invitation from his wealth manager that was like, hey, we're going to have a presentation, an educational presentation on dealing with volatility in the markets. And this is right during the time where we've got this global trade war going on and the markets are going crazy. They were down at one point almost 20%. I think they were down more than 20% after the reciprocal tariffs were announced on just after the 1st of April. So now they're bounced back and they're actually at all-time highs, but it's been crazy with the flow of news. So he was kind of looking for strategies concerning, just how to manage around that volatility. But what he walked into was a presentation by one of the asset managers that the wealth manager employs. So the strategy of this asset manager was provide a concerning statistic and have a solution. But the 2 points that connected the solution, it was always expensive and it was always complex. And guess who was offering that solution through their platform? Right, the asset manager. So Rob was not impressed with this. One of the examples that was pointed out was the focus on bonds. Bonds in 2022, the long-term bonds were down close to a third. The asset manager offered individual bonds as a solution to this, but really didn't cover the nuance of the different types of bonds available to investors. You could have not only long maturity bonds, like he was explaining how they did so bad, but you can have medium and short-term maturity bonds. You can have highly risky bonds that are tied to company performance. You can also have bonds that are tied to municipalities or governments. So, of course, that wasn't really discussed in depth in the presentation. Another example of a problem was this idea of volatility. The asset manager said you can really use this volatility to your advantage if you know how to play the options market. And it's kind of made Rob perk up a little bit. One of the strategies that really sent him over the edge was this idea of selling puts to create an income stream and then benefit from that volatility. So when you sell a put, you're basically selling, you're acting like an insurance company. So you're collecting premiums, but the catch is, though, if the market goes down, then you have to buy assets that are worth less than the strike price that you agreed to buy them at. So let's say you sell a put on an asset. The asset is $100. You sell a put at $100. You collect a $2 premium. So you think, this is great, a $2 premium. I can use that to fund living expenses. And it's very unlikely that the asset is going to decline in value. But let's say the asset goes down to 90. The person that you sold the option to exercises the option. You have to buy it for 100. It's worth 90. You've lost $8 net of your premium. So that was the strategy that this asset manager was pitching. Rob was extremely put off by this, and rightly so, because that is a very dangerous strategy, especially when you're trying to decrease volatility in your portfolio. Sure, you can earn an income from doing that, but you open yourself up to a lot of risk. as well. So I'm glad he shared this experience. I think a lot of people walk into these things not really understanding that it is a sales pitch and people are going to try and scare you and get you to buy expensive, complex products. And that's exactly what he outlined. So I think it'll be a great benefit. I think over 100,000 people watch that video. So shout out to Rob and kudos for him subjecting himself to that and documenting it for everyone. Other thing coming up for me, I've got an event on just tomorrow afternoon. I'm going to a lunch, CFA Omaha event for um, a talk on economic updates. So Nate Kaufman, he works at the Fed of Kansas City. He actually lives in Omaha, but he works for the Federal Reserve of Kansas City. He's going to give a talk that's titled "Resilience Tested: A Cautious Outlook for the U.S. Economy." So I looked up his previous presentation. He gave one recently on agriculture. His main focus is in ag, and that makes sense just based on where he lives. Um, Primary takeaway from that was, the farm industry has been doing pretty well just with the uncertainty in trade negotiations right now. They are expecting more transfer payments to farmers in 2025. But I guess he's going to expand that talk to include the entire economy. So I'll be looking out for what he has to say there. Okay, so I think with that, I did want to transition over to take a look at Right Capital. So because one of the things that I wanted to do, one of the videos that I made this week was about a couple who, this guy posted on Reddit. He's like, hey, my wife and I, we have $3 million, but I'm just not sure if I can really mentally be prepared to pull the trigger on retirement. I feel like I'm not quite there. And I'll walk through a couple of different ways to think about that. One would just be the math and looking at stable draw rates. And then two would be the emotional side, which is actually much more difficult to figure out. I think that's what he was asking about. So the commenter on that, he mentioned a couple of resources that I also think are a good place to start. One would be Die with Zero by Bill Perkins. And then another one is Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. Because really, if you fail at the second part, the emotional side of retirement, it's going to open you up to a lot of potentially bad outcomes. The best of which is, flunking out of retirement, just going back to work. Not a horrible outcome, but you really didn't achieve your original goal. I've seen a lot of people get sucked into a lot of non-fulfilling volunteer work that, it's something to do, but it kind of stresses them out, and they actually find themselves to be busier in retirement than they are when they were working, which is not exactly what people set out to do. But then third, and it's not really talked about very often, but people just they don't know what to do with themselves and they get kind of depressed. So there's this whole problem about thinking about how are you going to design your life post working years to really get the max fulfillment out and feel like, hey, I can still add value even though I am transitioning from a producer to a consumer of wealth, and I can see my assets potentially decline in some years that I'm living off the income and some of the principal and I'm not earning wages. So that's kind of the starting point for this conversation today. Well, I want to look at Right Capital and kind of model out what are some of the worst things that can happen that we can plan for within the planning software. Okay, let's go to sample plan. All right, so here's John and Jane's sample. I am going to adjust their portfolio to match that situation I was just talking about. So let's go over and adjust their net worth. Let's just bump up their investment account. Apparently they have one account, 2 million to $3 million. It's a 70-30 portfolio. It's in John's name in his retirement plan at work. Posted they were mid to late 50s. Adjust that. They're going to be married filing jointly. Local taxes. Enter the percentage of AGI to be assessed by a city or municipal. Let's just say 0 to keep it simple. And they are going to be hourly financial planning clients. So they might have fees, but they're not going to have ongoing AUM fees. We'll save that. I have a feeling this is going to be a pretty high chance of success here. Yeah, especially because they're going to have Social Security on top here. Let's take a look at that. Mm-hmm. We'll just pretend John's retiring now. Turn his income to 0. Okay, good. That decreases to 83%. Good. So I just wanted to make sure that we're capturing expenses throughout their lifetime here. Okay, so 83%, pretty good probability of success here. They have some flexibility to spend a little bit more, just depending on how much risk they want to take in their plan, how much, and by risk, I mean chances they'll have to decrease spending in some form or fashion if we do get a string of bad returns. But I think 83, a lot of people would agree that's a pretty healthy spot to be. If you're closer to that 99% chance, you're likely underspending what you could be and leaving a big pot of money for second generation when you pass away. So 70-30, let's say, what can we think of? What are some horrible things that could happen to these people? That's bad to say. Let's say Social Security just goes away. Let's say, you know what? There's actually a problem. You're not going to get your Social Security checks. What does that look like? So let's go back in here to income. I do want to show it side by side. I don't want to just turn it off though. So this is saying it is coming out exactly the same, which is not accurate at all. So wouldn't that be nice if it was? Maybe it is because it's not showing any Social Security on there. So I think what we have is we don't have any Social Security showing up in here because we eliminated John's income off the plan. So let's go back to income, Social Security. Here we go. Then we'll leave Jane's off. So now we should see some divergence. Yeah. Takes that 83, moves up to 95% chance. So you could argue that they should probably be spending some more money here, just given that Social Security amount. Now, we don't have healthcare expenses in here, but it just goes to show that 12% difference. That's a big, big difference there between having Social Security and not having it. Even just a modest amount here, $3,000 per month. Then, of course, you would have Jane's spousal benefit as well. So let's take a look at what that would be in our cash flows. So it's going to turn on at 67 for John. Yeah, 40,000. I wonder if it's not counting Jane's. Oh, there we go. Then Jane gets, when she's 67, it would turn on then. So 67,000 total. That's in future dollars. So that if we estimated it at $3,000 per month, what John might be receiving, and then we growed it. The inflation rate, I think it's between 2 and 3% in right capital now. And you can argue if that's the right inflation rate, but historically, it's been pretty close. Yeah. Okay. So bad thing number one that could happen, Social Security for these guys, it's important, but probably not going to make or break their plan. And then I also wanted to add in, what if we take a look at if they have long-term care expenses at the end of life, how big of an impact is that going to have on the amount they could spend in those earlier years? And this one we just model in. Let's go to expenses. And we'll make it really catastrophic here. So 10,000 per person, 20,000 if they both went into a facility. Let's say John was in there for 5 years. Let's say they were both in there for 5 years. That would be 5 years for John and 7 years for Jane. So we'll use general inflation to start. This is going to be pretty ugly, I have a feeling. See, it does drop it to below 70%. So this is where, depending on how risk averse John and Jane are, they might want to start making some changes to decrease spending. But even with this really bad outcome of having a long-term care event at the end of life for 5 years for a male and 7 years for a female, it's pretty unlikely. I mean, that doesn't happen very often from what I've seen. You still have some levers to pull. So one thing that people often forget about is you can't sell your house at that time. It's very likely that it's going to be paid off at that time. So let's add that in as income. So it's a $500,000 house. And that would be when John is 85. And we'll keep it conservative. Earned income is going to be taxed higher than it would be for a house sale right now. If you're married, you could exclude up to $500,000 of the gain. So this is going to be taxed pretty aggressively, but that's okay. It'll be a conservative estimate. John's age, 85. Still that same percentage. I'm not sure if it captured it. Yeah, it did. Wow. Oh, wow. Look, it's saying spend unsaved cash flows. So it's just figuring we're going to spend that, which is not accurate. Yeah, so we will have to fix that because that $500,000 is going to go a long way to offsetting those long-term care expenses. Even with that inflation adjustment, they're going to be back above that 70% threshold. Means their chance of success is going to go up pretty dramatically at that point. So, um, yeah, just wanted to take a quick look at that. Just with retirement planning, you think about two of the big worries you have is Social Security is going to go away, and I'm also going to have to pay a facility tens of thousands of dollars a year to take care of me because my family's not going to be able to. For someone in this position with a few $1 million, probably less of a chance of that, especially if you can keep your expenses in line with your values and really spend money on what you value, um, and not have discretionary expenses get too high. So that's a topic for another day, though. It looks like we don't have any Q&A, so we'll just go ahead and end it here. Let me know your thoughts, and hope you have a good week. We'll see you later. Bye.